Alex, there have been, let's call them better weeks in the video game industry.
Yeah, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say there haven't been very many of them this summer.
It's true. It does seem like one of those things where, oh, that's right, we've crossed a certain threshold. It won't get worse. And then, hey, don't worry, life's got some surprises in store for you, buddy. It just got worse.
There's always something worse just lingering off in the horizon. You can sit there and pretend it's not there and be like, today's a brand new day, everything's going to be great. But no, that weird, formless terror that's just kind of off in the periphery is always lingering there, just waiting to be like, just kind of sneak up on you when you least expect it, just kind of get in your ear and be like, hey, hey, fuck you.
Yeah, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Big Rigs 2 could happen at any point, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
From the creators of the Night Trap Kickstarter comes Big Rigs 2.
I don't. That is a really. I don't want that combination of things in my head right now. Shit is bad enough. Please don't put that there. Please don't put images like that.
Are the Big Rigs developers still around? Like, are they still making games?
Yeah, they made the main guy, who is some sort of weird game development mercenary from Russia or the Ukraine or something. I don't know. He's from Eastern Europe. He worked with Epic at some point, and maybe as a contractor. I don't know, because I think he had some sort of connection to the People Can Fly. And then he went and made that zombie game that got pulled off Steam a couple of years ago, because it was like blatant false advertising.
The War Z or something like that?
Which got a different name at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. When I interviewed the Atari new CEO for like an article on the site like a couple months back, he mentioned that game as one he was proud to have invested in.
That is telling of a lot of things, a lot of different things. There was at one point something being bandied about around the time that War Z game got pulled, where we had an opportunity to possibly interview that guy. And it was thrown at me that maybe I would like to interview that guy.
Uh-huh.
And the idea of me interviewing the guy who made Big Rigs, that felt like the closest this industry is ever going to get to a Frost Nixon moment. So I immediately said yes, and then within a week, they pulled back the interview, so we didn't end up doing it. But I was so ready to do that.
Is it going to be like a in-person or phone interview?
The idea that was floated to me was that he was going to be in town, so we were going to do it as a real like face-to-face interview. I said I would have done it on the phone if he wasn't there, but I think at some point they realized who I was, what my connection to all that was, and they just kind of slowly backed away, like, nope.
So that wasn't just some enthusiast website. They connected the dots on who wrote that review.
Fair. Those dots are really easy to connect. Like, you do one search for my name, and that is pretty much like the second thing that comes up. So if I was in PR, I wouldn't let me interview that guy either.
I wonder how that guy feels about that now, because there are like two ways that goes, right? It's either he can laugh about it now, or he could not laugh about it at all.
You know, I bet he doesn't laugh about it very much.
That's my gut feeling too. And I don't know why it is. I don't know this person. I don't know anything about them or their life. Or
Sergei Titov is his name.
Say it again.
Sergei Titov.
Sergei Titov. Man, that'd be a dump truck for the millennium.
Yeah.
Probably. I don't know. Would it be funny now? I don't know. Is it only funny in this context? I'm not sure, but
I don't know.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from.
We had a moment there, and it was a nice moment of levity in a week that has had precious few of those.
Yeah, it is. It's been a tough week. It's been a tough couple of weeks. There's a premium Q&A up on the site that I did in which I try to address a couple of questions that the community has been asking all of us about. You know, it was certainly something that came up at PAX and is something that comes up now, and I suspect will be something worth talking about for some time to come. You know, to get in how we arrived to this point would take an entire show that we're not going to sit here and break down how we got there. Also, because you know parts of it I don't think are worth acknowledging in the parts they played in getting us to this moment. But yeah, I definitely feel as though, and you know, this is true of anything, that when folks that you know personally get involved or get dragged into things, it makes it personal in a way that you don't quite understand what's going on and how other people might be being affected by it till it's happening to people that you care about. And you know, the term "you care about" I think can be a pretty broad term. Like I care about all the folks that are guests on our website, whether it's the users on the site, the developers that we highlight in articles or podcasts or videos or whatever, the guests that we have on our many live shows. Like those are all people that we care about, because you know we're a personality-driven site in which we want our audience to have a good time, and our audience has a good time if the people on our site are having a good time, even if we're talking about, you know, serious subjects. And man, it gets personal real fast when those people start getting dragged in a real ugly way, and it makes you sit up and take notice in a fashion that, I don't know, the fiery hot anger does not come to the surface until you see the kindest of folks dragged through the mud in a way that they sure did not deserve it.
No. And, you know, my whole thing in this has been, I'm not someone who gets much enjoyment out of being angry. I don't enjoy wading into conflict of any kind whatsoever. You know, I'm lucky in the sense that I was raised by fairly even-tempered people who sort of taught me to kind of turn the other cheek and just sort of not look at things, you know, from a perspective of pure anger. But this week has tested me on that in a lot of different ways. And I think that came out yesterday on Twitter, where I kind of went off a little bit about what's been going on, what's been happening to people that, you know, we have a lot of affection for in this industry. And, you know, I don't have a nice way to say anything about any of this stuff. The only thing I feel like I kind of can say is nobody, like, I don't care what the root belief is behind any of this stuff. I don't care if there is, like, a legitimate ethics concern that, you know, is sort of, I guess, like, is the basis for where some of this stuff has gone. The harassment stuff is just fucking unconscionable. Just straight up unconscionable. I don't know who believes that this is a viable, worthwhile way to approach this kind of stuff, but if that is the kind of thing you believe in, I could not possibly be further from understanding how you live and how you exist. Like, that is not, it's just so far beyond and unacceptable. Like, I can't even form these words in a way that doesn't just result in me screaming motherfucker over and over again, because that's the level of rage that I'm getting about this stuff. And that doesn't happen to me. I pride myself on being incredibly cool about most things, and this has brought anger out in me. Like, and going all the way back a couple of months, even just everything that's been going on, you know, in the last couple of months, like, this has just been bringing anger out in me in a way that I barely know what to do with. And I don't know. I'm just incredibly sad and depressed that, like, we've kind of come to this place where this, you know, this kind of harassment stuff has become, frankly, the fucking norm.
Yeah, and if you are not a premium member and have not seen the Q&A I did, one of the things I touched on there was this sense that you get from some people, and one thing I'll say about what's happened here and what's often happens in a lot of these instances is that it is very easy to paint with broad brushes, and those are always things to be careful about because using terms or communities in broad strokes tends to rope in a lot of people that don't necessarily deserve to be roped in that way. But to your point about there being sort of in the mix of all this, like some folks that do have what could be considered in a certain context, or without all the other stuff going on, legitimate concerns or something worth discussing regarding the games press and things of that nature. It's really hard to have that conversation in the middle of all of this. And
Right.
what I would advise to you is that if it really is a problem and you're really passionate about it and you want to have that discussion, it's not going away. If this is really from your perspective a systemic, deep cultural problem in the games press, it's still going to be here in a month. It's still going to be here tomorrow. And you have to create priorities in terms of what's more important to be addressed. And when a movement gets co-opted for other means, whether those folks have seemingly noble intentions or not, it's one of those things where it becomes very hard to focus on one part when the other part of it is just so ugly. And I think that's kind of where I land on that. Is I understand if you want to have that conversation, we can have that at a later time. It's just not really right now. And I hope you would be sympathetic to that and empathetic to the folks that have gone through real terrible stuff in the last couple of weeks, driven from their homes because addresses are posted on the internet, horrible things that are, like you said, unconscionable and are a reason why there are certain things that need to be taken priority over others. Does not mean other things aren't important, because life is all about priorities, and you can get to the other stuff later, and doesn't mean we won't, but you got to have some patience and realize like people's lives have been impacted in a real way, and that's not going away anytime soon.
No.
So yeah. So that's how I feel about that. I could probably talk about it forever. You could probably talk about it.
You know what? If you want to know how I feel about all of this, I put it all on Twitter yesterday. It's not hard to find. At this point, I don't think I have a whole lot more to add to those statements, other than to say, if you're in this business and things like harassment just aren't permissible to you anymore, never in a million years would I ever blame you for getting out, because it's not worth it. It's not worth having yourself, your livelihood attacked on a constant basis just because you have a viewpoint on something, because you want to work and you want to be visible. Nobody deserves that. Nobody.
Have you thought about adding the words motherfucker?
Motherfucker!
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite sure how to come up with the transition.
No, it was good.
I've been
And
sitting on that
actually,
one for a while.
It was that had been bubbling in there, and it was good to kind of let that out. Motherfuckers!
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Calm blue ocean. All right, I'm fine.
So that's that. We don't. There's a lot of nuance to what's going on in terms of what we believe, what others believe. There's a lot of nuance to this. There's certainly plenty of it to read about on the internet, and I doubt it'll be the last time that we revisit either this topic or a similar topic. But it felt like something we needed to talk about in some context before we moved on to the release date for Mortal Kombat.
Oh, yay! Yeah, that's...
And So appreciate you guys, especially given that, we didn't spend, 20 minutes setting up exactly what it is. Apologies for some folks if this comes out of, basically, if you're not on Twitter, a lot of this might seem out of left field.
Yeah.
Do some Google searches, you'll find some stuff written up in some places.
And you know what? If you're really interested in the ethics side of all of this, there's an article up on Medium right now that really breaks down the reality of this whole fucking thing in a very smart and logical way. So by all means, go read that.
Yeah, and send PMs to us on the site if you've got we got Tumblrs like email me Patrick@GiantBomb. Like if you got questions, we're there to try and answer them. But
Absolutely.
Did you play any video games this week?
Yeah, I did. Well, so to be fair, I picked just about the most depressing game I could possibly dig up for this week. I finally dug into Gods Will Be Watching.
I want to do that too because when that patch went out, it made it seem palatable.
Yeah. I still don't like it.
So okay, so the patch that went out, there's an interview on the site when I talked to the developers about so like Gods Will Be Watching, like a sort of like puzzle game that has like a lot of violence as a result of your actions when you screw up. Was also notoriously incredibly difficult, and then also had moments of complete chance that could ruin situations you had set up through no fault of your own, just the roll of the dice. And the developers went back in and added several different modes. One of which I think they removed so there's the original mode. There's one that removes the chance stuff entirely, and then there's one that's like a puzzle mode that takes out there's no way to fail. I think I don't know. But either way, they added stuff to make the game more approachable.
Yeah, so there's the super hardcore mode, there's the regular mode, which was their old easy mode, there's one that takes the chance out, and then there's one that also makes the puzzles easier on top of not having any of the chance. So I chose the one that took the chance out but kept the puzzles at about the original easy mode level of design. And conceptually, I find this game really interesting because I like the idea of building puzzles around these situations of just extreme distress, of just the real bad scenes. Like there's basically a half an hour long torture sequence in that game, which is not pleasant. Though to be fair, you're not the one delivering the torture, so for some reason I found that like slightly more palatable than like say the GTA torture mission. So I don't know.
Ugh, yeah.
Yeah. There's a reason behind it, whether you agree with it or not. It's there. Like the situations the game sets up are interesting to me. Like it's set in the far-flung future. It's set in space. There are all these different like terrorist groups and organizations that are kind of fighting one another. The problem is that as much as I think the story is interesting and I kind of like the art design of it, I don't think the puzzle designs are fun at all. And granted, I don't think this is a game that is really about fun so much as it is just about like the satisfaction in figuring stuff out. But that satisfaction for me is just not there. I was okay with the opening two sequences, which are the ones we've shown on the site before. The one in the ship where you have the hostages, and then that torture sequence. The one that comes after that is this unbelievably complicated plate spinning thing where you are well, I mean, it's actually not that complicated because really all you're doing is just trying to keep track of like 9 different people all doing different jobs while they are trapped in a cave trying to synthesize some kind of antidote to a biological weapon. And you have 29 hours to do it, and every half an hour you can tick off a half an hour, but they're like people lose energy and people have to work on this other stuff, and it's kind of crazy because it's just time management more than anything else. You're just trying to manage people's time for a whole sequence that goes for like close to 40 minutes. And I tried it a few times and I kept fucking it up, and after a while I was just like, I'm not enjoying this at all. Like, I want to see what the next thing is, but not enough to keep doing this over and over again. Like, I realize that this is a game that was designed very much around failure and that you were designed to fail often, I don't think it's good. I don't think that is a good thing, and I don't think that the design they had for that stuff isn't in the least bit enjoyable.
Is it so when you fail in a game, if you fail and know why you failed and learn something from it, that's useful. You can take that into the next attempt. When you fail and gods will be watching, do you immediately go, "Oh, aha, that's what I did wrong. Let me take that into the next attempt," or is there some vagueness about it which then results in you maybe making the exact same mistake a second time?
So yes, I did learn some things in failing, like in the torture sequence, for instance, when someone is chained up to the wall, I learned that you really only have one shot with that. Like they can only pull the chain once without killing the person that is attached to that. So that is something I learned from it. And then I was able to subsequently eventually beat it because I learned not to, let myself get killed on that thing. In that other sequence I was just talking about, I learned the best processes for trying to synthesize the different antidotes quickly, like what the processes were for making sure that I had people to test it on and all that kind of stuff. But the sequence of components that you use to build the antidote are different every time. So you still have to do a bunch of guesswork to get to that point. And in between there, basically, you'd still run out of a ton of time just trying to get that antidote together, and then it does a little rug pull thing for you that's like, oh, hey, by the way, here's even more you have to do, and then you're just like, oh, fuck this.
Yeah, that doesn't. It sounds like they've got something there, but the execution of the idea is a little bit off.
Again, I love the concept. I just don't like the designs they have made for these stages. And, maybe there's more later on that's like way better than this early stuff. I don't know, but I'm at the point now where I just kind of don't want to keep playing it.
But the idea of like intense, high octane, like high risk, bottled scenarios that don't involve, twitch action, but instead involve, a different kind of resource management. That sounds really interesting. It sounds like they've dreamt up some pretty cool scenarios, in terms of, by cool I mean like you feel tense as you're doing it, like people are going to die as a result.
And they're different. They're not. It's the kind of stuff that I haven't seen games really approach in this kind of way before. There's these kinds of like high pressure scenarios. It's not just like a timed thing where you have to kill all the guys before the timer runs out. It's like, no, here are these like it's literally just like job management in a crisis situation, and that's kind of a cool idea. Again, I just don't think the way they have it laid out really works.
Yeah, the idea of layering that with puzzles, I can see becoming frustrating. The idea that before it had moments of chance seem incredibly frustrating. The idea that you could get 30 minutes into something and then lose because of a coin flip. While that might be how life works, that's not, game scenarios are often meant to be completed, not that you get to the end of it and go, well, that just didn't work out for me. So yeah, it sounds like a talented team that's got some really interesting ideas, but hopefully they kind of take those and tweak them a bit with whatever they end up doing next, because playing that game jam version of the game, it was very easy to get excited about them building out a bunch of scenarios just like the game jam version, but it sounds like maybe they took the wrong lessons from that, or at least where they took it was not where people wanted, which is too bad.
Or maybe it's just an idea that was better served as a single serving kind of thing.
Sure.
Maybe it was something that just couldn't really be built out in that way. I don't really know. I never played the game jam version, so I'm not sure, but yeah, as a retail product, as a full-on game as it exists, for me personally, Gods Will Be Watching did not work. So I think I'm probably going to be throwing that by the wayside for the time being. I still have a couple of backlog things I need to dig into this weekend, and then this showed up today.
Oh, look at that!
I can tell you're very excited about, Patrick.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm fan number one over there.
Hockey. I'm a bandwagon fan of hockey through and through. That's just a sport that I hop on when the Blackhawks have made it into the playoffs. deep into the
Yeah,
playoffs. Not even the beginning of the playoffs. It's got to be right before the Stanley Cup before I'll even flip it on.
fair enough. Yeah, hey, at this point, I just watch the playoffs. Like I occasionally will watch a regular season game if it's a good matchup, but
Too many
there
games.
there's so much playoffs. You practically get a season in the playoffs.
So it's hockey season almost starting again. Is that why that game's coming out?
Yeah, I think first week of October it officially starts.
Hmm.
Maybe slightly earlier than that. I don't know. But yeah, so this is out. I got it now. I've heard mixed things about this version. Specifically, they have taken a bunch of stuff out of that game to make it work on the new one, which is kind of a bummer. But these games always play pretty well, so I don't know. We'll see. I have a little bit of hope for it. I mean, Madden was better this year, so who knows?
The 2K games, aren't they the better hockey games? Isn't that usually?
They don't make hockey anymore. They haven't made hockey, I want to say about 2006, 2007, somewhere around there.
Oh, so it's just basketball.
Yeah, well, for a long time they were making baseball also, but then they just
Right.
recently stopped doing that. So now, like, their two sports games are NBA and WWE.
Gotcha. I'm playing a lot of Diablo 3. A lot.
So it's got its hooks in you.
Well, there are two things that made that happen. One, I now play the game on expert instead of hard. The game really, really begins to shine when you are playing on the higher difficulty levels. I cannot implore you enough. It is more profound. When people say in the Halo games that you should play them on hard because that's the way it's meant to be played, which is how Bungie often phrases their difficulty selection, because it seems like that's how they balance the game. And I've always played those games on hard because it's like, man, this feels like this is where the combat system really comes into its own, and you feel like you're under threat a lot of the time. And that's totally what happens in Diablo as well, where when you are playing on hard and more specifically expert, not only are you getting way better drops, but just you have to give a shit about how you're using and employing all of your skills and what order you're using those skills in, to the point where not like every single scenario is one you're worrying about, and eventually the loot drops that come from playing on expert are so crazy and beneficial to you that it starts outweighing the difficulty itself, and you can't advance beyond expert until you beat the game at least once. But it got tremendously fun really quickly, especially when combined with playing with someone else. So I've played the vast majority of everything past the middle of Act 1 with a friend, and that's a game that shines on higher difficulties, and it's a game that shines when you're playing with other people in a way that I was mostly using Diablo 3 as a time waster in between having finished Divinity and then jumping into Destiny next week. But now I'm furiously trying to get through as much as Diablo as I can, knowing that, assuming Destiny gets its hooks in me in the way that I think it might, that I won't get back to Diablo.
Yeah, I think the caveat you need to end to that, put on the end of that, is that it is tremendously fun with a person who is engaged in the act of playing Diablo 3. Because I played as much of the Diablo 3 as I played with my girlfriend, who did not enjoy Diablo 3. So that did not help the experience one bit.
Yeah, playing a video game with someone that wants to play a video game turns out to be a pro, not a con, when you were playing a video game. So, I don't have necessarily a whole lot to say about Diablo 3, except that if you're interested in playing it, the game, like the way the difficulty works, is really fascinating too, because you can change it on the fly mid-battle, right? Like you can be in the middle of a fight and knock it down to a lower difficulty. Like there were instances where I was playing an expert and the game spawned like 4 unique enemies at once in a mob, which means there are yellow characters that have abnormally high hit points, can attack a lot harder, have certain special features such as creating poison clouds where they walk, or fire clouds, or burning the ground where they walk, which just makes your life a lot harder.
Right.
So there have been times when I've ran into a mob like that, I throw it back down to hard. It means that they're easier to kill, the loot's going to be worse, but I get through the scenario, and then, boom, 2 minutes later, I've put it back up to expert because I can get through the vast majority of what the game throws at me on that difficulty level. And I think the game does a really poor job at making the difficulty be something you should constantly be looking at, as opposed to something you pick up front and then move on from, like every other game. Like the difficulty is fluid in Diablo, partially because of the randomness of the mobs and the dungeon structure. And the game would do better if it sort of told you, hey, like, you seem to be cruising through this game. We're gonna bump it up to hard for a little while. If you don't like it, don't worry. Like, bring it down. I don't like it. I understand that it's not dynamic, because that could get frustrating in a way that people maybe want to play the game in a different way. But
Right.
it's a scenario where the game does itself a disservice by not more heavily encouraging the player to explore what difficulty means, because it means something different in Diablo than I think it means in other games, or at least the way it scales and is integrated into the game is different than how we traditionally think of difficulty in a video game.
Yeah, there are no. I mean, this, and feel free to take these words and throw them out of context any way you like. For me, I often feel like games that are really okay. If I have to find myself changing a difficulty level in a game, it's very rare that I feel like I need to make it harder. Most cases, when I select a game that has normal difficulty, that is balanced in a way that is not necessarily a lot of fun for me, so I tend to scale it back a notch. In the case of Diablo, I most definitely felt like starting on the kind of average difficulty, like, this is not doing it for me, and was very happy to bump it back up. That is a rare thing for me, and that is not something I think most games do very often, because usually hard just means, for me personally, frustrating. In the case
It's
of
hard.
Diablo,
It is what it says.
Yeah.
As opposed to Diablo, where hard feels maybe like normal and expert feels maybe like hard.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just feels like the difficulties are not labeled. Maybe it's a result of them wanting to, maybe Diablo has a reach that is beyond just sort of your core game player, but I don't know, it just feels slightly disingenuous, or at least I wouldn't be surprised if someone played it on a lower difficulty went, what's all the fuss about? Because most people are going to play the game once, right? Like, not Diablo may be made as a game to be played multiple times, and that's how the loot scales and blah, 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 blah. But a lot of folks are going to play it once, and it would, having played through a chunk of Act 1 on normal and realizing, man, if I'd done this the whole game, I'd have been bored out of my mind.
Yeah, totally. And
for some people, maybe that's enough, right? Like, for some people, Diablo is the click game. And even when you're playing on higher difficulty levels, it is still that to some extent, but it's at least you're strategic with your clicks.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny this came up because I found myself sort of in part of a conversation last night where that fucking Ghostbusters game from a few years ago came up.
Yeah, that game was great.
And I realized that I was not alone in my belief that the only way that game is playable is on easy. Because on normal, you get to like that graveyard level, and it's like, fuck this shit. That game is not fun at all at that point. And even before then, it's barely fun on that difficulty level.
I really enjoyed that game. Part of the nostalgia. It's not a fantastic game, but I really enjoyed it.
It is a game that is exceedingly well decorated. Like, they put all the pieces of, Ghostbusters fan stuff that you would ever want into that game. That said, the actual act of busting ghosts is not fun on any difficulty other than easy, and, man, some of that voice acting, especially the Bill Murray stuff, you could tell he didn't want to be there.
Yeah, but it was
still that Bill Murray in a video game, which is something.
Yeah. It's also that what I found so interesting about the Ghostbusters game is it seemed kind of like, so a lot of people classify it as Ghostbusters 3, and that's fine because the way the development of that film, if it ever comes out, is going, it will never quite be the Ghostbusters 3 that I think people want. But, if you go back and look at the origins of the original Ghostbusters film and what, why am I blanking on his name? Not Ivan Reitman, but Crystal Vodka Man.
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah, Dan Aykroyd. That guy's kind of crazy. He's actually legit into ghosts and the spirit world and aliens and conspiracies, and you can find documentaries where he talks about this stuff on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
The original premise for Ghostbusters, was much more grand than like compared to what happens in Ghostbusters 1. Like Ghostbusters 1 is grounded compared to what Dan Aykroyd wanted to do, which involved multi-dimensional, like the Ghostbusters were going to all the Ghostbusters video game feels like what Dan Aykroyd wanted Ghostbusters 1 to be, and that's part of what I thought was cool about the game, because they were able to build that in a way that you couldn't do with that film.
Yeah, and I don't think it all necessarily held together, but it was, as someone who genuinely believes that the original Ghostbusters is the greatest movie ever made, I certainly got no shortage of fan service out of that. So,
do you hate Ghostbusters 2?
No.
Good. All right.
No,
all right.
I think it's fine. I think it suffers, one, by being the sequel to the greatest movie ever made.
Uh-huh.
It is the Citizen Kane 2 of movies. And on top of that, some of it's not as funny or really that great, but none of it is terrible. It's dumb, but none of it is terrible.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I can accept that. I get frustrated when people slag on Ghostbusters 2. Again, not because I think it's better than Ghostbusters 1, but because I think people take too much of, in comparison, it's not nearly as good, which, of course, but...
It's a much more straightforward action comedy than the first Ghostbusters was, and I understand why people do not like that as much. That said, he is Vigo! You are like the buzzing of flies to him! Come on, fucking that shit... Peter McNichol, that...
He nailed it. So
There's
good.
Some great shit in that movie. There's some really great shit in that movie. That whole courtroom scene is great.
Yeah. Yeah, Ghostbusters 2.
There are parts in it that are really good.
Ghostbusters 2, there are parts in it that are really good.
Yeah, put that on the back of the box. Some of this is great. I don't know. Put my Twitter handle on it.
Bill Murray's in it.
Bill Murray is in it. He agreed to be in this movie.
So...
Did you ever watch the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon?
That was like the good one, right?
That was the good one.
Because there were multiple...
Not the one with the gorilla.
I don't think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I watched the real Ghostbusters. Were there like notable people that did the voice acting in that were not?
Yeah, was it Lorenzo Music, the guy who did like Garfield's voice?
Yeah, there are people
Frank
that are...
Welker was in it too.
Yeah, there are notable voice actors in the real Ghostbusters imitating, more known. But I remember when I was older looking up the voice actors and being like, wait, that guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the real most of that's on DVD now, right?
The whole series is out on DVD. I actually bought the box set not that long ago because that was a show that I super duper loved as a kid.
Does it hold up at all?
You know what? There are some episodes.
More than it should.
Some of that shit was written by J. Michael Straczynski, who
really?
He's gone on to write a whole bunch of stuff over the years. And some of those episodes are dark in a way that children's cartoons, especially around that era where it was mostly like shit that was designed to sell action figures, some of that shit is dark in a way that is surprising and still kind of holds up. I mean, yeah, it's a kid's cartoon, so not all of it does, and some of the dialogue's pretty bad, but some of those storylines are actually kind of fucked up. Like the one where they go underground and they find the doomsday door that's going to suck everyone into the hell dimension, like that shit's crazy. The one where they go to the town and the entire town is ghosts, like, oh man.
That just seems sad.
Yeah, it's like some of it's really sad.
Dang. Real Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
None of it's on Netflix or anything, is it?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
No.
No. They want you to buy that box set. They don't want you to stream that on a service.
I got that thing on sale for like $50. You know, it was for the number of episodes that's attached to that. That's not bad. So
that's true. Did you play anything else?
No, that was kind of it. I realized I hadn't played Hearthstone in like 2 weeks, and I got back into that, and so I started playing that again. Then I also realized I hadn't played WWE Supercard in a couple weeks. Tried playing that once and realized my time with that game is done.
Was there anything that you checked out at PAX after our panel that was, and it's worth mentioning?
The thing that I definitely think was worth mentioning, and I won't go too long into this because there's now a video up on the site of the guys playing it, but we got to play Gang Beasts with the developers of Gang Beasts. I had not played the 8-player version of that game. I had not played it since they made the kind of physics changes and added like the Ferris wheel level and all that stuff. First off, those guys were super duper nice. Kind of terrifyingly excited to have us come play the game with them. The 8-player works. You know, it's like obviously there's optimization stuff. Like sometimes in some levels the frame rate just kind of fucking goes to shit, but like that game still works as like an 8-player brawler. And I'm actually super excited for where that game is headed. I was kind of worried that, them getting money and getting Double Fine backing them might cause them to sort of like change the direction of that game in some way. But apart from adding what seems to be like a whole bunch of outfits and just kind of making it a lot bigger, doesn't seem like they're really doing that, and that makes me very, very happy.
Yeah, I ran into one of the creators at a Double Fine like public party at PAX, and I don't know what parts of our conversation I'm able to share, so I will share none of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say they have ambitious plans for what they want to add to that game. But all the stuff that they outlined doesn't seem like it'll detract from the core experience that is already really, really fun. It's all stuff on the periphery that if they didn't add it, I think Gang Beasts would still be a pretty great, awesome local multiplayer game. But all the things they're looking to incorporate and build around and add to what's already there all seem like things that are going to make it a thing that should not exist to that degree. But, on a week where the internet, not necessarily the best, Gang Beasts is benefiting from the positive side of that because early access has really paid off for them. It's only been up for a couple of days, and the studio is well set for a while, so they can really just focus on the game in a way that they wouldn't have been able to do any other way. And I told you some of the stuff they told me at the airport before we all departed, and yeah, Gang Beasts, man, there's a lot going on with it. So I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see where it goes. And
Beef City, man, Beef City.
And it is one of those games that early access gets, I don't want to say a bad rap, but there's an expectation, I think, these days due to a couple of games that what you're getting really is early and maybe not worth your time. But, Crypt of the Necrodancer, Gang Beasts, those are both games that, even in their early access state, I think you're going to get your money's worth out of.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Is there news?
There's a couple of things.
Briefly
Gear VR was announced this week. Samsung and Oculus have been rumored for a long time to be working on a mobile VR headset, and that was formally unveiled this week. It will work with the Galaxy Note 4, at least in the early edition that they're putting out. It ships sometime this fall. The SDK comes out in October, I believe late October, so that means we probably will not see Gear VR until at least November, although there are a number of developers, including Harmonix, who announced they are working on something for Gear VR, that their developers are already working on products for it and games for it. But Gear VR is an accessory for the Galaxy Note 4 that you put on your head, you slide in the phone, and then you can experience VR stuff without being tethered to a computer or a PlayStation, if you're talking about Project Morpheus. And the thing they're shipping in the fall is called like a early access edition, or I don't know, something along those lines. It's not meant to be a final.
Everything is just called early access now.
Yeah, they used the term early access in like the Oculus blog post, which made me laugh because that term didn't exist before Steam made it so. But what will ship this fall is not going to be pushed as like a big thing. Like it's a big deal, but it's mostly going out there as like sort of a beta program for people that are willing to dive in early, like Google Glass or something like that. So where you go in with the expectation that, this doesn't totally work quite yet, but here's a glimpse at what's happening.
Yeah. Well, that sounds exciting. Um, yeah, I have nothing to add to that.
I don't. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think mobile actually has theoretically more potential uh, for VR than the other stuff we've seen. I think a PlayStation 4 or a PC gets at the graphics horsepower up front in a way that mobile is behind on. But the leaps we've seen in graphics technology in mobile in the last 5 years since
Oh yeah.
the advent of the iPhone is tremendous. And the true future of VR, I would not be surprised if it was actually in mobile, largely because it's untethered to a big, bulky, expensive device that powers, the GPU that's kind of happening on screen. So, oddly enough, it's coming after we've all gotten excited about Oculus or a Morpheus attached to a big, bulky machine. But Gear VR might actually be where the action is at, in 5-10 years. So that's
Yeah.
Gear VR. Sounds interesting. Mortal Kombat 10 has a release date, April 2015. 2015.
That is almost exactly the date I was kicking around in conversation with people as a guest. So perfect. I probably came closest without going over. I win.
And that's roughly around the time that the last one came out, right? That was like a spring game.
Injustice? Yeah. It was in April sometime. So.
And they're making Goro a playable character that is a pre-order bonus that I'm sure will be something you can buy
Down the road.
when that game actually comes out.
Pre-order bonuses, always the best thing.
Yeah, it usually makes fans that want to buy. Well, I guess you can pre-order on Amazon. It's what it doesn't say here. If he's a retail channel-wide. Goro is a retail channel-wide pre-order exclusive in North America. What the fuck does that mean?
I think that means they're saying retail channel, so they're saying that is their way of saying individual retail outlets. So they're saying that all retail outlets in North America will get the same pre-order bonus.
Why couldn't they have just said that?
Because the people who have to write these press releases spend so much time in meetings with people who throw this terminology around, they don't realize that normal humans don't know what the fuck it means.
Okay. I accept that answer. That's
I as someone who has been to Destination PlayStation and has watched salespeople talk to publisher salespeople and the terminology they throw around, it barely registers as human language.
Telling people what Destination PlayStation is.
That is the retail
people
event.
only hear about Destination PlayStation when leaks come out of it.
Yeah. So Destination PlayStation is the thing that happens. I think they still do it yearly. The year I went, it was held at a kind of nice-ish resort in Scottsdale, Arizona, where they fly out a bunch of sales reps from the different retailers from around North America and sometimes elsewhere to come look at the hot lineup of PlayStation products coming for financial 2000 whatever year it is that it's happening. So it's representatives from different game companies showing off their games to those usually on the PlayStation platforms to give them an idea of that. I did that when I was working on Beatles Rock Band. It was quite literally me, John Drake, and a couple of other people from Harmonix playing the same 3 songs in the same order 9 or 10 times a day for like 3 days. So it was a lot of fun.
And you shared a little bit of this on Twitter, but I think I'd be remiss not to ask in light of recent events that Joan Rivers passed, and you actually had you encountered Joan Rivers at some point.
Yeah. So also going back to the Harmonix days, at one point we were on QVC. Don't know how that happened. Still to this day, don't know how that happened.
Is it on YouTube? Like, it's got to be archived somewhere, right?
It exists somewhere. I don't know where. I know there's that video on Giant Bomb of those guys watching it from the basement back in the day and just going like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
It was really long too, right? Like QVC is not like, hey, come do a 15-minute bit.
It was 2 segments. One that was like in the middle of the day, one day that was like an hour and a half long, and then there was another one that was on at like 3 in the morning. So we had to go in and do this live segment there at 3 in the morning because, you know, shut-ins, they buy video games. I don't know. And, you know, so we did this. It was fine. The segments were super stupid. Whatever. QVC is a fascinating place. It's essentially a giant compound in the middle of rural Pennsylvania, and the entire town surrounding it, like all the adults work at QVC, so the town is basically run by children. It's weird, but yeah, it's a fascinating place. Joan Rivers has done a lot of home shopping stuff in her past, and so she has been on QVC regularly, and she happened to be there the day we were there. She happened to be wandering into the studio as we were walking out. I think Drake approached her, and she was very gracious, gave a photo with us. She had no idea what the hell we were doing there, didn't seem to really care, and I was glad for it, you know, because I feel like that would just give her more material to launch back at us. But yes, she was. That was a very surreal experience running into Joan Rivers while at QVC.
Wow, that's crazy.
If you've never seen the documentary A Piece of Work, came out a few years ago, sort of follows her around, kind of a year in the life sort of deal. It's fascinating. Even if you don't care for Joan Rivers' comedy, it is a really interesting portrayal of, you know, what her life in the 60s and 50s, like coming up as, you know, a female comedian in a profession that had very few of those. Her relationship with The Tonight Show and Johnny Carson, and just kind of like what her later life was like the fact that she was constantly just trying to be busy all the time. Like if there was a few hours free in her like day planner, she would freak out about it and be upset about it. Like, why am I not doing something right now? Why is there not something I could be doing? And you know, I think that kind of work ethic is something that is very much taking a look at, because she was kind of unparalleled in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I think that's on Netflix.
Some folks have asked for cheddar about the end of The Walking Dead, which I played earlier this week. But here's what I'm going to propose. It would be, I think, crazy to try and talk about that in vague ways.
Right.
It's the finale. There's a lot of stuff going on there. It would be extraordinarily difficult, other than to just say, I think that both of us were disappointed.
Yes.
That's about all you could say without going into more. So here's what I'm going to propose, is that on a Monday show, at the very end, when we're winding the show down, we will carve out 15 minutes or so at the very end. We'll declare it up front, so there's no worries about, like, oh, you jumped in the show and you're gonna see this. We will declare it really quickly that, hey, this is the end of the show. Goodbye. If you want to stick around, we are gonna go ahead and talk about season 2 of The Walking Dead, and we'll just go spoiler crazy, and we'll talk about whatever comes to mind. And I feel like that will better satisfy folks that want to hear that discussion rather than trying to dance around everything that happens. And we'll so know that in advance, and then we'll give a heads up on Monday's show, and then before we transition to that, and blah 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 blah. There'll be plenty of stuff for you to avoid it if you have not been playing along. But if we're going to talk about that, I really just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we've really danced around the entire season so far, but now that we're at the end of it, I think it would actually be fun to just say, like, let's talk about what the fuck happened.
And if you want the spoiler-heavy recap, that is going up today. It is done. I just need to add images and do a little light editing to it, but that is done. That will go up. So there will be a place for you to get my views on the last episode of The Walking Dead, and also chaos going on outside my window. That will be up today. Sorry for the delay on that. I'm the worst. I know.
There's been a lot going on. So
there has. So that will happen, but yes, I think the real basic thing I can say about it is I wasn't real happy about it, so we'll leave it at that.
All right, well, we will revisit that next week, because I'm excited to talk about it. I do have a lot of thoughts about it, but I use your house.
They're building an apartment building next to me. They just today decided to start throwing metal things around. I don't know.
It mostly sounds like your cat's just like throwing the pots and pans in the kitchen.
I would prefer to that, honestly.
All right. Well, what are you getting up to this weekend?
Well, I guess I'm gonna be playing a bunch of NHL because that I think is up next week. And beyond that, I don't have a whole lot of other plans. I'm very happy to have a weekend again because we didn't really have one. I mean, PAX was super fun. You know, getting super kicked in the face aside, that was a pretty fun show. But I'm just gonna chill this weekend.
Do you still have bruises?
So I have one on my arm from where someone accidentally whacked me too hard with one of the sticks. I have a couple of very small ones on my back, but otherwise I'm fine. So,
Well, I really enjoyed the fact that at the PAX panel you were trying to communicate to folks to stop hitting you so hard, and no one heard you.
it wasn't that bad for the most part. It was just a couple of hits where they clipped me in a place where they weren't intending to, and it was like, no, stay away from the limbs. Don't just the back. Just hit the back. That's fine.
All that stuff is up on the site. If you have not
Yep.
had a chance to see it yet, the Q&A we had for our premium members is up on the site with apparently vulgarities bleeped out, which is hilarious. I love it. So
Why
good.
not?
And the panel is also up as well. The first 7 minutes or so has kind of a weird humming, but Drew said that it kind of goes way after that. So you can see, you know, the company that acquired us in that panel video. It's a good time. We had a lot of fun doing that and all the other stuff at PAX. This weekend, tomorrow in fact, is Bit Bash in Chicago. It is like the first real push to have a big games festival out here in some capacity. It's at the Threadless store. Like the main Threadless store in Chicago. There'll be a lot of local multiplayer games set up, a lot of developers on hand. I will be there at some point in the afternoon sometime. There's definitely a push to try and get some greater community stuff happening in Chicago. It is free technically, but you know there is sort of a recommended donation because a lot of folks that are putting it together are kind of just putting their money out there and hoping it'll be reciprocated by folks that stop by. So obviously if money's tight, you can still come by, hang out. It's all good, but any little bit you can give will help justify doing events like that in the future. And my hope is that I'm going to bring my nice I'm going to bring my camera.
Ooh.
And I'm going to shoot something there. My cameraman might be my wife, but we're going to give it a shot. I've got my recorder, and I've got an XLR cable, and it's got a microphone and everything. So I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to go out into the fields and report live from, well, live. I'm going to shoot it live and then make a video.
Live to tape.
Yeah, live to tape. Something from Bit Bash. So if you're in the Chicago area, highly recommend coming by to check it out. There'll be beer and game beasts and multiplayer games, and it should be a ton of fun. So if you're a Giant Bomb member in that area, please come out and say hi because I will be there. And that is, I guess that's it. That's a show. We'll be back on Monday with me and you, I guess, unless the internet squashes us. I guess it's possible.
Could happen.
It could happen. Anything at this point, Alex. Anything could happen. Anything could happen. All right, I'm gonna see you on Monday.
Motherfucker.